It's DSP's top 5 DLCs of 2010. Number 2, Mass Effect 2, Lair of the Shadow Broker. Mass Effect 2 was certainly one of the most engrossing games of 2010, specifically because of its vast array of individualized, interesting characters. And the actual meat of the game was actually recruiting these characters, some new, some old, returning from Mass Effect 1, and basically helping them with their backstory so that they would become loyal to you and help you survive the final suicide mission. Now, one of the startling omissions of Mass Effect 2 was a continuation of the story of Liara, who was one of the main characters from Mass Effect 1. Now, you do run into her, and you do find out that actually during the time when Shepard was dead, she had actually got teamed up with the Shadow Broker because she was looking for information and basically ended up getting roped into his crime syndicate. Now, she actually is in a position of power, but then as you investigate further, you find out she cannot leave. The Shadow Broker actually will not allow her to leave his grasp, and she's one of his most important pawns. So this is pretty much where it ends in the main story of Mass Effect 2, and you're kind of left hanging, especially if Liara was one of your favorite characters from Mass Effect 1, and maybe if you even had a romantic interest with her, which I actually did in my playthrough that I did on YouTube. Therefore, Lair of the Shadow Broker was a breath of fresh air, returning us to this world, teaming us back up again with Liara on a quest to finally track down who the Shadow Broker really is. Through a couple engaging hours of gameplay and story, we actually find out the true story of the Shadow Broker, which I won't spoil, but it is a pretty epic boss battle, following up with an actual positive fate for Liara, where she basically takes over his role and leaves it way open to interpretation for Mass Effect 3, whether or not they're actually going to take that DLC and whether or not you've saved Liara or not from the Shadow Broker's grasp, and if that will affect the game in the third part. Also, one of the really cool things, which a lot of people apparently didn't know, is that if you do save Liara, and she was your romantic interest in Mass Effect 1, you actually have the ability to woo her again in this DLC, and, well, we'll just let the scenes speak for themselves. Go check it out in my playthrough. So, really fun, really interesting to come back to this universe and to re-explore a character who was kind of partially overlooked in the original Mass Effect 2 campaign, wrapping up that story, giving it some completeness and possibly a new way to start off that story again in Mass Effect 3. Really exciting. Definitely one of the best bangs for your buck in 2010. If you haven't checked it out yet, I definitely recommend you go get it. And PS3 owners, good news for you is that this DLC will be included in the PlayStation 3 version of Mass Effect 2 coming out next year. So good stuff. Up next, finally the DLC of the year is announced.